Project 2025 has been in the news recently. Here are two reasons. First, for the draconian measures it would place on the American people through the restructuring of the federal government if it were implemented. Second, for the many denials of the Republican nominee who even being associated with it, although his name is mentioned over 300 times in the plan. This evening's presenters will deal with the first reason I mentioned. Janet Youngans is a Cape May County Democratic Committee member and president of the very active Upper Township Democratic Club. Dr. Rose Traficante is vice president of the equally active Cape Island Democratic Club. She and her husband have resided on Cape Island for over 15 years. In addition, she is a retired educator of 38 years. She served as assistant superintendent of Edison schools prior to her retirement. During her career, Rose served on the governing board for New Jersey principals and supervisors. Rose holds a doctorate in policy and history from Rutgers Graduate School of Education. She has vast experience speaking with companies, political organizations, and educational institutions. To do this work, she became adept at reading, researching complicated issues, and breaking them into manageable pieces to explain to her audiences. Rose has read the 900 plus pages of Project 2025 more than 6 times and has a thorough knowledge of what is at stake should Trump and a Republican majority be returned to power in November. Rose has given this presentation many times to local clubs and groups, including Janet's Upper Township Democratic Club. Tonight's presentation will be a little different, a conversation discussing the dangers of Project 2025. Ladies, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Harvey. Hello, my name is Janet Younghans, and this is Dr. Rose Traficante. Welcome to our Zoom presentation. We're calling it Project 2025. Let's understand the threats to our freedoms and sound the alarm. I first heard Rose speak when she came to one of our meetings of the Upper Township Democratic Club. So when we decided to have this presentation, we expected around 20 or 30 people to show up, our usual number for a monthly meeting. Imagine our surprise when 65 people crowded into the Seaville Friends Meeting House where we gather. We had to race around gathering up benches, and a lot of us ended up in the kitchen peeking through the service window just so we could hear what she had to say. And once Rose started to speak, she had everyone's attention immediately. And because of the success of this and other times that she has spoken in Cape May County,
Excuse me, I think you went to mute. You need to unmute.
I'd like to thank my fellow Cape Island Dem leaders, certainly Mary Pat Myers, our president, as well as fellow officers Laurel and Justine. But most importantly, I'd like to thank you for joining in tonight because we have our Project 2024 ahead of us. Our objective is really to do something, and that is to empower you to be able to be informed and to undermine Project 2025 with your wisdom and your knowledge, and also do something, and I'm going to quote John Fugelsang, and that is to burst the bubble of the right-wing bubble with good trouble.
well, let's begin with our first slide.
The screen is
I'll
up.
give you a few minutes to read it over. Rose, please explain the Heritage Foundation and their role in creating Project 2025.
Okay, so the Heritage Foundation back in the 1980s was a wonky think tank of conservative ideas, really benign. And then when Reagan became president, they gave him the mandate and he passed it out at his first cabinet meeting and began to initiate some of the mandate. It really resurfaced again and had an interest by Donald Trump, who has really created himself in the fashion of Reagan, so he thinks, and has really used the mandate to become a roadmap for transforming our democracy into an authoritarian government. Now, the Heritage Foundation is currently aligned with Viktor Orban's Danube Institute, which, and most of you know that Orban transformed a democracy of Hungary into an autocratic state. So we call just from the beginning that Project 2025, it has as its purpose to serve as a pathway to change America into a white nationalist power.
Rose, what is a woke culture warrior?
Well, Project 2025 is based on defining a citizen as, and it's biblically based as defining a citizen as a white heterosexual.
But I would fit into that category. But I fight for people who aren't. So does that make me a woke culture warrior?
Absolutely. A woke culture warrior is someone like you because you want to continue to expand the opportunity, to expand the rights that have been unrolling and gathering momentum in our society. So when you look at the phrase, the next conservative president, the definition of the conservative president is to undercut equality for all.
At this time, we would ask you to please take out your handout entitled Project 2025 What You Need to Know. This was sent as an attachment in your email that provided a link to the Zoom call. It can also be accessed through a link in the chat. We'll give you a moment to access that document. In that document, the first term mentions the plan to eliminate worker protections. How would it do so?
Well, throughout Project 2025 is this notion that the society should be divided by those who lead and those who follow. Let's go back to Ronald Reagan, who really went after unions. And also, as he raised taxes on the working class, he lowered taxes on the very rich. For example, Social Security was taxed, so were tips, as well as we were no longer allowed to write off the interest from auto loans and our credit cards. Reagan, of course, led the way for Donald Trump, whose tax cut, again, for every dollar, 87 cents went to the very wealthy, and the rest went to the working class people. So workers' rights, the ability to have a middle class, a robust middle class, is very much frowned upon in Project 2025. One thing I want you to think about when it comes to workers' right is Schedule F. You might be hearing a lot about this. When Trump was president, he had an executive order, and what he did is he classified a whole component of federal workers under Schedule F. And as soon as he becomes president, he's going to fire these people. They've lost their rights to maintain their jobs, and they will be replaced with political appointees who will carry out the business of Project 2025 and the desire of the president rather than the rule of law and homage to the Constitution.
All right, Jeff, we're ready for the next slide. So you hear a lot about DEI from Trump and his supporters. What does that acronym mean, and is it mentioned in Project 2025?
So a lot of Project 2025 takes criticism of diversity, equality, and inclusion. Diversity is considered a fault or a bad thing in our society. Remember, go back to and it's also linked to economics. Remember going back to Reagan when he talked about welfare queens. Well, think about diversity now. Anytime we talk about civil rights, anytime we talk about um, different cultures, the battle cry of economics and the threat to our welfare certainly surfaces. Also, when we talk about Project 2025, they use diversity and equity to divide people and certainly to lower the standards that set up for our country's justice. Without diversity, without equality, without inclusion, the bar is lowered and the maintenance of equality and justice begins to become eroded. We are a multicultural society, the largest in the world, and this is a power grab. So you can also think of Project 2025 as a power grab for white nationalists as well as authoritarianism. Why? We want strict obedience to those in power, to those who have authority at the expense of personal freedom.
So in this slide, they're mentioning the end of public education. As a retired educator, I'm alarmed to hear that Project 2025 wants to dismantle the Department of Education. What would be the impact of this action on our society?
Well, we're talking about the elimination of public education. So, very briefly, at its core, education is equal access. That's what public education is about, for all members of our society to have opportunity through education. And once we eliminate education and public schools, we begin to divert public money, tax money, to the hands of those who are private. So part of Project 2025 talks a lot about vouchers, talks a lot about removing gender equality, removing critical race theory, removing any reference to history as a study of expansion of rights, and really begins to transform the narrative so that people, our schools really will no longer exist. And then parents will get a little bit of funding and they can use that money as they wish to homeschool their children, to hire tutors, to send children to alternate schools, and really just take away everything that education has accomplished.
And we're ready for the next slide, please. Abortion tourism, what is that?
Well, throughout Project 2025, obviously, is a lot about abortion bans, as well as the Dobbs decision as being the best thing to happen to families in this country. But abortion tourism is a mean statement. It talks about and refers to states that allow abortions where women have to travel to have an abortion. For example, if you live in the southeastern part of this country, from Texas all the way, only Florida and Georgia have abortion as an opportunity. And of course, it's this notion that, you're traveling for an abortion but they're not considering the great discomfort, the great expense, the pressure, uh, of course, all of the complications that come to states' rules of abortion, which is really not at all what people come to understand. So I'm going to end this segment by really quoting from a Fulton County, Georgia Superior Court judge who I really think summarizes what Project 2025 is when it comes to women's health care. He says, the Republican appointed judge says, to force a woman to carry a fetus is really seeing a woman as property. To force a woman to carry an unwanted, not yet viable fetus to term violates her constitutional rights to liberty and privacy. Really reducing our country, the USA, is not a plantation.
Many people are alarmed that Project 2025 seems to target folks in the LGBTQ plus community. Would you please expand on that?
Well, if we're looking at a white, heterosexual definition of a citizen, then anyone else who does not fit that description is marginalized. So a lot of Project 2025 mentions Biden repeatedly. Often people say, well, Trump's name is mentioned 330 times. Well, Biden's is mentioned over 600. And of course, the idea to eradicate and erase most of what has happened for equality. So when we talk about LGBTQ plus rights, what we're talking about is marriage equality, any kind of legal recognition to restrict adoption, to destroy marriage equality, and really to strip the community of any rights. So, when you think about insurance and you think about all the overlays that come with being a full citizen of our country and being denied that, that's really a big, big section of Project 2025. And the last thing I'm going to say about it is throughout the whole section, they equate transgender issues to child abuse and pornography.
I'm a baby boomer, and many of my friends have aging parents. How would Project 2025 affect me, my friends, their parents, and other generations that follow into retirement age?
So it's no secret that Project 2025 professes and promotes what the majority of Americans find distasteful and do not agree with. Again, think of Project 2025 as eliciting a power grab. So in this part of the book, or of the 900-page essay, they're going to increase the retirement age from 67 to 69. That's full retirement. So this benefit is a cut, and it will definitely deny retirees with a lot of money. So if you understand how Social Security works, for every month that you take your Social Security prior to the full retirement age, you're going to be hit with a penalty. So most Americans see this as unpopular, as I said, but the Heritage Foundation in Project 2025 does not. So their solution to keeping Social Security solvent is to cut our benefits. There's also a whole section on to discontinue negotiating with drug companies for prescription drugs, and also to use a block grant. Right now, states receive a full percentage of the cost of Medicare or Medicaid, and Project 2025 would reduce what states get to a block grant, and then again, minimizing and putting caps on what we would get through Medicare and Medicaid.
One of the things that disturbed me the most about Trump's 2016 campaign was when he made fun of a disabled reporter. I thought that should have ended his campaign right then and there, but it didn't. Now it seems that Project 2025 is going to affect our disabled community as well. Please explain the impact on them.
I can spend the whole night talking about how Project 2025 will negatively impact our disabled community. But in the consideration of time, but of interest and importance, the Project 2025 recommends and reduces money for disability, which is critically important for Social Security as well as Medicaid. Remember, states that expanded Medicaid, their citizens do much better. So this is just following the pattern of reducing benefits for most Americans, especially the disabled. What is even more insulting is that in Project 2025, there is explicit language to defunding special education, as well as defunding institutes that have long served to assist handicapped citizens and members of our community to fully integrate. Most of you know about Gallaudet University, that's being on the chopping block, as well as books for the blind and books on tape.
Wait a minute. The Constitution states that there should be a separation of church and state. How can this happen in this country?
Well, when we look at the Heritage Foundation, we are looking at a roadmap to establishing white Christian nationalism. Yes, an ideology and a belief system. Now, the Establishment Clause definitely promotes and protects the First Amendment right that the government must not favor one religion over another or one religion over a non-religion. Forget about it. That's going to be discontinued. Remember, Trump is promising us on day one of his presidency, he will be an authoritarian dictator and he will absolve the Constitution. He will destroy rule of law. Okay, so this is the master race white Christian playbook, and in it there's a whole section on ordered liberty, very much mastered over the southern states idea that there's a group of people who need to be shepherded and ruled over by the elite. So the pursuit of liberty is really the pursuit of power of the powerful over the rest of us. So the theme of restricting liberty is very much part of reforming America.
Deportations? What is that all about?
Well, we've heard that we're going to have the largest deportation in the history of this country. Now, you heard it during the president debate. You heard it with the vice president, that we're going to deport 20 to 25 million immigrants. Now, the real number is 11 million. So mass deportation is going to be the solution to all of the challenges of this country. It's going to help bring down the prices of homes. It's going to take away inflation. We're going to lose the fentanyl issue. We're going to have low crime. So really, when we talk about immigration, it's always aligned to being the source of all of the cultural and social and economic problems of our country. The Project 2025 is all about deporting people and really taking our country, which is projected to be multicultural by 2020, 2045, and again, going back to the master race and establishing those who will be the rulers and those of us who will suffer. Now, last night, if you saw the interview on 60 Minutes, the question to Kamala Harris was, how are you going to pay for all of your improvements for the middle class? Has anyone asked Trump the cost of mass deportation? I have found one article in Sunday's New York Times that talked about the expense of building holding pens, the expense of processing, the expense of deporting and transporting people, and most importantly, the humanitarian crisis that mass deportation would result in our country, that we would be pariah on the stage of the world. So when we're talking about mass deportation, you've heard about Springfield, that the comments about dark-skinned people, and really what mass deportation language, which is the cornerstone, remember, of not only Project 2025, but Trump's presidential campaign, is really a good example of authoritarian speak to invoke fear of others.
With the recent impact of Hurricane Helene and now Milton, it's clear that climate change is very real, and we're already feeling its effects. With so many signs of climate change, I'm very passionate about the need to create forms of renewable energy. I feel it's important that the U.S. become the leader in green energy to power the future. Would you please explain how Project 2025 may hinder this progress?
All right, let's cut to the chase. Climate change is science. Project 2025 does not relate to science. The far right does not recognize science. So immediately climate change does not exist. Now, in Project 2025, there is explicit language to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act as well as the Jobs Act. And we know that both of those have provided tremendous funding for green energy. Now, for Biden, the climate crisis presents an opportunity for employment and an opportunity to begin working on these projects across the globe. For Project 2025, it's drill, baby, drill.
What do they mean by a second American Revolution? I find that statement very alarming.
You should be alarmed because Project 2025 aligns with the notion that there's going to be a tremendous transformation or reformation of our country. The document is a well-coordinated strategic plan put together by many of Trump's previous administrators. Now remember, before there was no plan. Now they are insiders. They come from working within the federal government and they know exactly where the guardrails are. Some of the people who have worked for Trump are at the helm of Project 2025. So the idea of expanding the executive branch beyond that which we know now and having the imbalance between the three is really the centerpiece of Project 2025 when we're talking about the president. It's also to give the president power over the military, the justice system, and all branches of the federal government. So it would probably evoke the worst tendencies of Donald Trump. And he will rely on his politically appointed allies to carry out his bidding and really ignore the rule of law and our Constitution. Remember, democracy means self-determination and is an obstacle to white Christian nationalism.
Well, thank you, Rose. You've shared so much. Now that I have all this knowledge, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sleep tonight. I'm feeling a bit hopeless right now. So, what can I do as a citizen to make sure that Project 2025 never sees the light of day, let alone become the law of the land?
All right. Don't fret. Don't wring your hands. Roll up your sleeves. And that's what we're all about tonight. We are not going to throw this opportunity to preserve our democracy and to continue to what we have been doing. Obviously, if you haven't voted, make your plan to vote. Challenge yourself to ask a question of someone who aligns themselves with MAGA or aligns themselves with this movement. For example, Harris's plan calls for $1 million or $3.5 billion to bring wealth to the middle class, to continue manufacturing. What is the cost of deporting 11 million immigrants? So learn to ask questions. Don't argue, just ask the questions that hit the points. Join your local Democratic club. Send postcards. Work a phone bank. Get involved in our GOTV efforts. And of course, if you're like some of us, you write spout-offs and letters to the editor. Our goal is to defeat Trumpism.
Well, thank you
Okay.
very, very much. At this point, we will take any questions. I think, Harvey, can we turn it back over to you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Rose and Janet. This is sobering information and it's right in front of us. We don't have any questions for you tonight. I think you gave such a very spot on presentation that you just laid a lot out there for those in the audience to think about and consider. Our safeguard against this corruption of our rights and the hijacking of the American nation is to defeat those who would put this plan into place. We did.
Yeah.
Just hold on just one second. If you have, Emily, if you have a question, just put it into the chat box.
Is there anything Biden can do to protect federal
Okay.
employees?
All right. Is there anything that President Biden can do in the current administration that would protect federal employees under a Trump administration?
I would say no. My answer would be if Donald Trump walks in, the game plan is to totally transform a certain level, millions of federal employees. If you go to look at the website for Project 2025, they're currently, it's like a LinkedIn web part of Project 2025 where you can send your resume and sign up to become a worker and attend the Presidential Academy. So I think that it's probably part of their understanding of what they call the deep state, that they're going to be quick to move against keeping the current dedicated workers who come in to do their job, serve the country, honor the Constitution with political appointees. So I can't answer for the current administration, but this is my understanding through Project 2025.
Oh, all right. Thank you very much. Our safeguard against this corruption of our rights and hijacking of the American nation is to defeat those who would put this plan into place. That is why we feel it's critical to bring this message to as many of you as possible. By supporting the Democratic ticket and voting for Kamala Harris for president, Andy Kim for Senate, and Joe Salerno for the U.S. House of Representatives, we can be sure to stop this effort to derail our system of government. If you vote by mail and have not yet returned your completed ballot, please do so as soon as possible. Remember, your ballot can be returned by mail, or you can place it in one of the drop boxes located throughout Cape May County. A complete list of those drop boxes can be found at www.capemaycountyvotes.com. Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. That's 1 month from now. If you want to get involved, you can go to www.cmcdems.com for links to the candidates' websites and information on what you can do. Remember, we are not going back. Again, thanks to our wonderful presenters, Janet and Rose. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. And on behalf of the Cape May County Democratic Chair, Marie Bliston, the Leadership Committee, our wonderful Zoom technical crew, we thank you for joining in and participating. Don't forget to vote. Support Harris, Kim, and Salerno. And good night from Cape May County.